While many Americans are being told that the Catholic Church is shrinking, some dioceses are reporting a completely different reality. Adult conversion programs are filling faster than expected. Hundreds of new catechumens are preparing for baptism, and in one diocese, the number of people entering the church increased by more than 100% in a single year. This is not a ranking of the largest Catholic populations in the United States. It is a countdown of the dioceses reporting the fastest growth in new converts. Where the change from one year to the next, some are major urban centers with thousands of participants. Others are smaller dioceses producing growth rates that have surpassed far larger Catholic regions. The most surprising part is not simply how many people are entering the church, but who they are and what is drawing them there. Young adults, university students, former Protestants, and people raised without any religion are searching for something they believe modern culture has failed to give them. And the diocese at number 1 recorded a surge that almost no one outside the Catholic world is talking about. Subscribe to the channel for more carefully researched stories about the Catholic Church and Catholic culture. Now, let us begin with number 10. Number 10. Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The Catholic Church in central Pennsylvania has carried wounds that cannot be hidden behind stained glass. Years of scandal, public distrust, and institutional pressure left many people questioning whether the church could still speak with moral authority. Yet while that crisis remained part of the region's memory, a different movement began unfolding inside parishes, college campuses, and correctional institutions. In 2026, the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown reported an increase of approximately 84% in catechumens and candidates preparing to enter the Catholic Church. The surge placed this relatively small Pennsylvania diocese among the fastest-growing conversion centers in the United States. These newcomers were not entering an institution protected from criticism. They had seen the headlines, heard the accusations, and understood the failures that had damaged trust. Their decision therefore carried a sharper weight. Becoming Catholic meant separating the truth of the faith from the sins of those who had betrayed it, while asking whether grace could still operate through a wounded community. The diocesan process brought together people from more than 24 parishes, along with college communities and correctional facilities. Some were approaching baptism for the first time, while others had already been baptized and were preparing for full communion. The official formation process required inquiry, instruction, purification, sacramental initiation, and continued formation after Easter, turning initial interest into a public and demanding commitment. That commitment also placed pressure on lifelong Catholics. Newcomers were asking direct questions about doctrine, authority, forgiveness, and accountability, forcing parish communities to move beyond inherited habits. A conversion class growing by more than 80% could not be treated as a ceremonial success. These adults were watching whether the church that taught repentance was willing to practice it, and whether the people welcoming them could offer more than explanations. Altoona-Johnstown begins this countdown not because its past has been erased, but because new Catholics are entering while that past remains visible. Their presence does not close the conflict. It intensifies it, placing personal conversion beside institutional failure and demanding that the local church prove what kind of community these newcomers have chosen to join. Number 9. Diocese of St. Petersburg, Florida. In the Tampa Bay region, Catholic conversion is moving through ordinary relationships before it ever reaches a parish registration form. A coworker accepts an invitation to Mass. A spouse begins asking why the Eucharist matters. Or a newcomer to Florida enters a nearby church looking for stability in an unfamiliar city. These encounters appear small, yet across the Diocese of St. Petersburg, they accumulated into an 84% increase in people preparing to enter the Catholic Church during Easter 2026. The surge unfolded across 5 counties, shaped by constant movement. Families arrive from other states, neighborhoods expand, and communities change faster than institutions can easily follow. Population growth may bring people closer to Catholic parishes, but relocation alone does not produce conversion. Each newcomer still has to move from casual contact to months of formation, where inherited assumptions are tested and private curiosity becomes a decision that affects daily life. Some entered as catechumens preparing for baptism, while others had already been baptized and were seeking full communion. Their reasons were rarely identical. One person may have been drawn by a Catholic marriage, another by the clarity of church teaching, and another by a parish community encountered during grief or loneliness. The common movement came later, when interest demanded a schedule, a sponsor, honest examination, and the willingness to be publicly identified with the faith. That 84% rise changed the atmosphere inside formation programs because larger groups carried more than additional names. They brought different religious backgrounds, expectations, languages, and family reactions into the same rooms. Catechists could not rely on a single explanation, while sponsors had to remain present when enthusiasm met resistance or when conversion threatened relationships built around an older identity. St. Petersburg's growth, therefore, spread through a chain of personal encounters rather than one dramatic campaign. A conversation led to a visit. The visit became a return, and repeated attendance eventually crossed into commitment. By the time the candidates gathered for the rite of election, the visible crowd represented months of decisions that had first taken place almost unnoticed. Number 8. Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, Florida. At one end of this diocese, military families arrive with orders that may move them again within a few years. At the other, students, government workers, and young professionals pass through Tallahassee, carrying ambitions that can make permanent religious commitment feel distant. Between those two cities lies a long corridor of smaller communities, each shaped by different rhythms, yet the number of people preparing to enter the Catholic Church rose by approximately 85% in 2026. The increase did not follow a single demographic pattern. Some seekers were young adults encountering Catholicism while studying far from home, while others were spouses entering formation after years of attending Mass beside a Catholic family member. Military life created another path, bringing people into close contact with chaplains and parish communities during periods of uncertainty, deployment, or separation. The diocese was not receiving one type of convert, but several groups moving toward the same destination for entirely different reasons. That diversity created tension inside the formation process. A university student questioning the culture around them did not arrive with the same concerns as a parent preparing for marriage or a service member confronting danger and mortality. Catechists had to connect Catholic teaching with lives moving at different speeds, while candidates had to decide whether their interest could survive relocation, graduation, career pressure, or opposition from people closest to them. The geography sharpened the challenge. Pensacola and Tallahassee are separated by hundreds of miles, preventing the conversion surge from gathering around one dominant cathedral or one celebrated parish. Growth had to be sustained locally through many smaller communities, each responsible for forming people who might not remain in the same city for long. That placed greater importance on whether newcomers were being prepared merely for a ceremony or for a faith they could carry wherever life sent them. An 85% rise placed Pensacola-Tallahassee ahead of other fast-growing dioceses, but the deeper movement remained unfinished. Many of these new Catholics were entering the Church, while their careers, addresses, and relationships were still changing, forcing them to build a permanent spiritual identity inside lives defined by transition. Number 7. Diocese of Venice, Florida. Many of the people entering the Catholic Church in Southwest Florida were not searching because their lives had collapsed. They had careers, homes, families, and the outward stability that modern culture often presents as enough. Yet beneath that stability, old questions remained unresolved, and the promise of comfort had not produced the meaning they expected. For some, the first opening appeared on a screen. A discussion about the Eucharist led to another video about confession, church history, or the authority of Scripture, and private curiosity slowly became harder to dismiss. Digital content could introduce Catholic belief, but it could not complete the journey. Eventually, the viewer had to close the screen, enter a parish, meet real Catholics, and decide whether fascination would become commitment. Across the Diocese of Venice, that decision was happening with remarkable speed. During Easter 2026, 1,077 women and men entered fully into the Catholic Church, representing an increase of approximately 94% from the previous year. The group included hundreds of catechumens preparing for baptism and baptized candidates seeking full communion across dozens of parishes. The transition from online discovery to sacramental life introduced a sharper conflict. Catholic teaching could no longer remain an interesting intellectual system examined from a safe distance. Candidates had to confront moral obligations, confession, authority, and the possibility that conversion might disrupt relationships built around a different identity. The church they encountered was not an idealized digital image, but a living community containing beauty, discipline, weakness, and responsibility. That tension became visible when the rite of election filled the church beyond capacity, forcing hundreds of relatives and supporters to watch from another hall or through a live stream. The crowd was not merely evidence of effective media outreach. It marked the moment when private searching became public allegiance, and when people who had spent months listening from a distance allowed their names to be called before the church. Venice reached this point through more than rapid population growth. The deeper movement occurred when people surrounded by comfort began questioning whether comfort was enough, and when digital curiosity crossed the difficult boundary into a faith that demanded their whole lives. Number 6. Diocese of Rapid City, South Dakota. Across western South Dakota, conversion does not gather easily. Parishes are separated by long highways, open plains, ranch country, and communities where attending formation may require hours of travel rather than a short drive across town. Yet in 2026, the Diocese of Rapid City reported a 96% increase in people preparing to enter the Catholic Church, placing it among the fastest-growing dioceses in the country. The rise unfolded through scattered groups rather than one overwhelming crowd. Some participants came from small towns, others from Native American communities, and others from families living far from the cathedral. Their journeys were shaped by distance, weather, work, and the practical difficulty of remaining committed when every meeting demanded planning. Here, conversion could not survive on emotion alone. It required repetition, discipline, and the willingness to keep returning even when the road itself became part of the test. That persistence became visible during the rite of election, when catechumens and candidates from across the diocese gathered at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. They arrived from separate communities, but the ceremony revealed that their isolated journeys belonged to a much larger movement. The strongest pressure often appeared after the first excitement faded. A person could feel drawn to Catholicism through scripture, marriage, friendship, or a moment of crisis, but continuing meant accepting months of instruction, while ordinary life kept demanding attention. Long distances offered an easy reason to stop. Family hesitation offered another. Every return to formation became a decision to move closer rather than drift away. Rapid City's growth carried unusual weight because a relatively small increase could immediately affect parish life. More newcomers meant formation teams traveling farther, sponsors giving more time, and priests accompanying people spread across an enormous territory. The 96% rise did not emerge from convenience. It came from people choosing a demanding path in a place where commitment had to be measured not only in belief, but in miles. Number 5. Diocese of Pueblo, Colorado. The number had crossed a psychological threshold. In 2026, the Diocese of Pueblo expected the number of catechumens and candidates preparing to enter the Catholic Church to rise by approximately 105%. The conversion class had not simply grown, it had more than doubled in a single year, pushing this southern Colorado diocese into the upper half of the fastest-growing conversion centers in the United States. In Pueblo, however, growth does not disappear into the anonymity of a massive metropolitan crowd. Many parishes serve smaller cities, rural communities, and towns where a decision to become Catholic can quickly become known beyond the formation room. Family members ask what has changed. Friends question why an ancient church has suddenly become important. In places where personal relationships are tightly connected, conversion can alter more than Sunday worship. It can unsettle long-held expectations about marriage, family identity, and belonging. That pressure gives the increase a different intensity. A person may begin with a private interest in Catholic teaching, but the journey soon becomes visible through months of attendance, conversations with a sponsor, and preparation for the sacraments. The candidate must continue even when relatives do not understand the decision or when difficult teachings challenge the life they have already built. Curiosity may open the door, but it cannot carry someone through the full process. The same surge also changes the responsibility of the parishes receiving them. A formation group that doubles cannot be guided by simply repeating the previous year's program with more chairs. Catechists must respond to people arriving from different religious backgrounds, while priests and sponsors accompany questions involving confession, authority, family conflict, and permanent commitment. Pueblo's increase became powerful because it moved through communities where faith could not remain hidden. Every new Catholic entered not only a sacramental life, but a social landscape in which that decision would be seen, discussed, and tested long before the Easter Vigil arrived. Number 4. Diocese of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh had already learned the language of contraction. Parish mergers, fewer priests, and the permanent closure of several church buildings had forced Catholic communities to prepare for a smaller, institutional future. Then the conversion numbers moved sharply in the opposite direction. For Easter 2026, the Diocese of Pittsburgh reported an increase of approximately 108% in catechumens and candidates, meaning the number of people preparing to enter the Catholic Church had more than doubled in a single year. That reversal disrupted more than expectations. A system built around consolidation suddenly had to find additional sponsors, expand formation groups, and give more pastoral attention to adults arriving with little shared background. Some had been baptized in other Christian traditions, while others were approaching baptism for the first time. Their questions were not shaped by inherited Catholic culture, and familiar parish language could no longer be assumed to make sense. The growing classes also exposed a deeper tension inside communities, accustomed to measuring decline through attendance, buildings, and finances. These newcomers had examined Catholicism from outside and still chosen to enter, often after confronting its teachings on authority, confession, the Eucharist, and moral responsibility. Their presence challenged lifelong Catholics to explain practices that had become routine and to live convictions that could no longer remain merely cultural. Pittsburgh's increase did not reopen every closed church or erase the pressures that caused restructuring. Instead, it changed the direction of the struggle. The diocese was no longer managing only what had been lost. It was also responsible for forming people who had arrived deliberately, carrying expectations that the church would offer more than nostalgia. That pressure became most visible after the initial excitement passed. A conversion group can double quickly, but belonging develops slowly through worship, friendship, discipline, and repeated participation. Pittsburgh's next test was not whether adults would reach the Easter Vigil. It was whether parishes shaped by years of contraction could recover the confidence and spiritual depth needed to keep them there. Number 3. Diocese of Norwich, Connecticut. In eastern Connecticut, religious silence has become part of the atmosphere. Many people grow up surrounded by old church buildings, but without any expectation that faith should shape adult life. Catholicism may remain visible in family history, architecture, or childhood memory. Yet for a growing number of residents, it no longer arrives as an inherited identity. It must be examined, questioned, and deliberately chosen. That choice became impossible to ignore in 2026. The Diocese of Norwich welcomed 98 catechumens and 152 candidates at its rite of election, producing the highest combined total the diocese had recorded in a decade. Compared with the previous year, the number preparing to enter the Catholic Church rose by approximately 112%. The psychological cost of that decision can be heavier in a deeply secular environment. Friends may accept private spirituality while questioning the need for doctrine, confession, or submission to church authority. Family members may view conversion as a return to something society has already outgrown. For candidates who had built their identities around independence, entering the church meant admitting that truth might demand more than personal preference. Norwich's surge therefore developed through internal conflict before it became visible inside the cathedral. Some participants had spent years keeping religion at a safe distance. Others were already baptized Christians confronting Catholic claims about the Eucharist, apostolic authority, and sacramental life. The decisive movement occurred when investigations stopped being intellectual protection and became personal surrender. The rite of election gathered those private struggles into one public moment. Names were presented, sponsors stood beside the people they had accompanied, and individuals who might once have avoided religious commitment allowed the church to recognize them openly. The crowd represented more than a regional increase. It revealed a form of Catholic growth emerging, where cultural Catholicism had weakened, but chosen Catholic identity was becoming harder to dismiss. Norwich did not rise through inherited loyalty or automatic participation. Its conversion growth came from adults moving against the dominant current, knowing that the decision could reshape how others saw them and how they understood themselves. Number 2. Archdiocese of Los Angeles, California. Across Los Angeles, the conversion surge did not gather inside one cathedral or one celebrated parish. It moved through hundreds of communities at the same time, crossing languages, neighborhoods, generations, and cultural backgrounds until the combined number became impossible to overlook. During Easter 2026, the Archdiocese welcomed 8,598 people into the Catholic Church, including 2,452 catechumens preparing for baptism and 6,146 candidates entering full communion. The reported increase reached approximately 139%, placing Los Angeles just below Duluth among the fastest-growing Catholic conversion centers included in the available data. The scale created a challenge that smaller dioceses rarely face, because thousands of people could not be treated as one uniform group. Some arrived after years without religion, while others came from Protestant traditions, Catholic marriages, university communities, immigrant families, or personal crises that reopened questions about faith. Parishes, therefore, had to protect the conversion process from becoming impersonal. Catechists needed to explain doctrine across different levels of knowledge, while sponsors accompanied individuals facing family resistance, moral questions, and the demands of sacramental life. The greater the crowd became, the more important personal formation became, because registration alone could not produce lasting conversion. Los Angeles had already welcomed 3,462 catechumens and candidates in 2023, followed by 3,596 in 2024 and 5,587 in 2025. Reaching more than 8,500 in 2026 marked a dramatic acceleration, transforming thousands of separate spiritual searches into one of the largest and fastest-growing conversion movements in the Catholic Church in the United States. Number 1. Diocese of Duluth, Minnesota. 76 became 186 in a single year. No enormous metropolitan population stood behind that leap, and no vast Catholic institution could absorb it without feeling the impact. In 2026, the Diocese of Duluth recorded approximately 145% growth in catechumens and candidates, the fastest increase among the United States dioceses included in the available survey. The power of that number lies in its scale. Los Angeles can welcome thousands across hundreds of parishes, but Duluth serves a much smaller Catholic population spread through northern Minnesota. When more than 100 additional people enter formation in a diocese of this size, they do not disappear into a statistical report. Their presence changes classrooms, parish schedules, sponsor networks, and the amount of personal accompaniment required from priests and volunteers. Earlier years had offered little indication that such acceleration was coming. In 2023, nearly 70 catechumens and candidates from 16 parishes and a University Newman Center took part in the diocesan rite of election. In the following year, 79 were registered for the same stage of preparation. The movement remained visible, but it had not yet broken beyond the ordinary limits of a small diocese. Then the pattern changed. People who had been searching privately began arriving almost at once from different communities. Some approached baptism without any previous sacramental identity, while others came from Christian traditions and faced difficult questions about the Eucharist, authority, and full communion. Their journeys may have begun separately, but the sudden concentration of those decisions created pressure throughout the diocese. Duluth could no longer treat adult initiation as a ministry operating quietly at the edge of parish life. Formation teams had to respond quickly without sacrificing depth, because rapid growth carries its own danger. A dramatic Easter class can create excitement, yet enthusiasm alone cannot form people for confession, moral discipline, regular worship, and lasting participation in the Church. That is why Duluth stands at number 1. It did not produce the largest crowd in America, but no other surveyed diocese increased faster. On a national map, the movement may appear small. Inside the parishes, receiving those 186 people, it was large enough to change the direction of the entire room. These dioceses do not erase the serious challenges facing the Catholic Church in the United States, but they do reveal that many adults are still choosing the faith freely after years of searching, questioning, and discernment. Whether this growth becomes a lasting renewal will depend on the strength of parish formation, sacramental life, and the communities that accompany new Catholics after Easter. Subscribe to the channel for more carefully researched stories about the Catholic Church, Catholic history, and Catholic culture. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.